Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to our quick conversation on Salesforce. Today I'll talk around trigger on off mechanism. So you all know, right? We have a trigger, and trigger we use for controlling some business logic on the same record or some select related records, right? Now what happens? Suppose in production I am doing a data load, right? And during that data load, I want my trigger to be not executed. Okay, that is one of the scenario. So to handle this scenario, we have one option, that is there is something called trigger active inactive, right? So if you go to any trigger and you see here, you can set the trigger to active or inactive. But for doing this, you need to deploy your code from your sandbox to production, and you all know, right? Getting permissions for deployment is always hectic and tricky, whereas we just want to do that trigger on off for certain data load, right? So in that case, we will need a trigger on off mechanism where we should be able to control that on off without making any changes in the code. So for that, there are a couple of options, right? Either we can use some record in custom object or standard object, which we can refer in our trigger, right? Or we can use a custom metadata record, record in custom metadata. Now what is these two options and which one is better, right? If we create a record in custom object or standard object, when we query that record, it will count towards SQL limit, right? Whereas if you use a custom metadata, it uses a cache memory, right? No SQL count. And that is where, you all know, right? In Salesforce we have to be very careful about using any of the limits. So to avoid that limits, and custom metadata admin can very easily go and change the setting. So what we need to do, in our trigger we need to refer to this record, right? And in that record you can put a flag, say true or false. If it is false, don't execute the logic. If it is true, execute the logic. That kind of mechanism you can implement. So let's see the code. So if you see here, I have this class, and this class method get trigger execute value. I'm into the trigger of account. I'm passing this parameter as account. Now I have created a common method, wherein what this method is doing, it is taking the name of the object, it is querying a custom metadata. Okay, what it is doing, it is querying the custom metadata mdt underscore underscore mdt, right? And it is passing that API name as this object name. So what it is doing is looking for the record which is set for object account, and what is the value, whether I need to execute or not. If it is true or false, based on that, in the account trigger, if it is false, then execute. If it is true, don't execute, right? Or if it is true, then execute. If it is false, don't execute. So that's the way, because there is no not operator. So if you go here in the UI, and let's check the custom metadata. So there I have a couple of fields. One is object name, one is the flag to execute the trigger. If I create a record by adding a new record, I added this record for account object, and I have set execute trigger to true. So if it is true, it will execute. So default I'll set it to true. When I need to do data load, what I'll do, I'll just edit it and set it to false and then save. I'll do my data load. My trigger will get that value as false. It will not execute. It won't allow the logic to execute. And then once my data load is complete, I'll just simply go here as an admin in production and update this flag. Okay, so without doing any deployment, I am able to control that from outside a record, and I am not even consuming any SQL limit. So that is called trigger on off mechanism using custom metadata. Okay, that is a plus point of custom metadata where it doesn't count towards SQL limit. Okay, this is the one scenario where you are skipping this. The other one is, at times what happens is, like suppose you are into the account trigger, you went inside the logic, and from this context your trigger goes to some other object, and from there that other object you are again doing something on the same account object, so it will again come here. So it will keep on triggering. So in that case you need to break that loop, right? We have a for loop, we put a break statement. Similarly, what I have done is I created one class and its method which will return me the flag. It's a static flag, right? Boolean flag. So with the help of that, first time I'll set it to false so that this condition evaluate to true and the code gets inside this. And I'll make sure that okay, next time this flag should be reset so that it won't satisfy this condition and it won't enter the trigger in the same context. So that's how we can avoid using this. Okay, then there can be a third scenario where suppose I have a class, right, where I am updating say account rating, and for this rating update I don't want any trigger to execute because I am sure this is my separate field. I don't want trigger to execute. How I can do that? Now I can use the similar flag the way I have used here, right? Utility for recursion control, set control recursion in accounts. I can just use this method, right? And if I set it, then it won't execute. Either I do this way, right? Here I can set that, or what I can do, I can just define another flag, public static boolean avoid account trigger is equal to false. I can put this condition in the wherever I want to skip. What I'll use, say I want to skip only particular event, say before update. So that what I'll do, I'll just put a condition. This is my class. This is the variable. I'll put if not this, then execute this, right? Now this code is contained within this, right? And this variable by default it is set to false, right? So it means always this will execute. Now if I don't want to execute this, I'll set it to true. So what I'll do in my code here, I'll use this variable and set it to true. Now when this will execute and it go inside the trigger, it will check okay, it is the before update and this flag is true. True negate means false. If this condition evaluate false, it won't execute this line. So this is how you can conditionally skip some code or skip the triggers basis your requirement, right? Within your code you don't want explicitly to execute the account trigger in this context, you can just set it, and again you can set it to false. Once that update is over, you can reset it to false so that it won't impact anything else. Okay, so these are the different ways where you can control trigger on off, trigger recursion, and you can control execution of trigger depending on your business scenario. Okay, I hope you got these three scenarios. These are very important points. Now you can control all your triggers with this. Even you can control the individual trigger event as well. It's up to you how you want to declare your custom metadata. You can put event for each and every for a object. You can put all the events, and we can put the separate flags for that. If I go here, right now we are just putting account and execute trigger. Here you can put multiple fields, account, or multiple checkboxes, execute before update trigger, execute before, after update trigger, execute before insert, execute after, or before delete. All those things you can declare all the flags, and accordingly you can utilize for each object. You can declare it here. Hope this is useful. We'll see you in the next session. Till then, thank you.